What's up, guys, and welcome to the Sistaprenuer Podcast, where we'll discuss everything women, women's health, and business. And I am the curator and host, Sharita. So today's topic is going to be about me. I feel like I need to give the people kind of a little insight of who I am because over the years, a lot of people who already know me, you know that I've evolved into a totally different person. I was not always who I am today, but I'm thankful for my journey and I just want to share a little bit of that with you guys. Kind of give you a shortened timeline of my life, where I come from, my morals, and my upbringing, so you can kind of understand how everything ties together into who I am today. Of course, I'm from Memphis, by way of Westwood and Whitehaven. I was born in Westwood. I lived there until I was about 9 years old, and then we moved to Whitehaven. My mother and father, they lived two houses down from each other in Westwood on Castlewood Street. So both of my grandmothers lived on the same street, two houses down. So imagine that, having both of your grandmothers on the same street. It was a little chaotic, but it was still fun at the same time because I got to experience both of my families on the same street. We lived in a small house, like I said, in Westwood. And I didn't realize this until I got older. It was about seven of us in one small 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath house. And I didn't realize this until I got a little bit older. I never really paid attention to it when I was younger. But I had questions as I got older. And I finally asked my aunt, I think I asked my aunt Sheila about it, like, how did we all live in this one house? But I remember vividly all of us being there, but I don't really remember how it was functionable, but we did it or whatever. My mother passed when I was 6 years old, and that was one of the most tragic experiences in my life. And I can't honestly say that I remember a lot about my mother, but I do know she was a very hard worker. My dad went to prison before I was born. So he went in the year I was born in 89. And I just remember going to see him back and forth in Millington because he was in the penitentiary. But it never really registered to me what was happening. I just remember we used to take these long road trips from Memphis to Millington to see my dad. And, he was never going home with us. So, but it didn't feel like, I was missing, a parent in the household because like I said, it was seven of us in a small home. I had my aunt, a few of my aunts, my cousin, my sister, my grandmother, my uncle. We all were in one household. So it was like I never really felt that void as a child with my father being locked away. Now, I do remember having to go to court one time and kind of just let the judge know that, you should let my dad out because, he's a great dad and this is and that or whatever. So I do remember him getting out and we moved into McKellar Woods Apartments. I loved it over there. By that time, was I going to Whitehaven Elementary yet? I don't think I was. I think I was still at Levi Elementary. But maybe next year, after my dad got out of prison, we moved into a house in Whitehaven after staying in McKellar Woods. And maybe a few months after moving to that house, maybe a few months to a year, I could have my timeline incorrect, but my mother passed away suddenly. I want to say they told me it was congested heart failure and they mistreated her. The diagnosis was the flu, but she passed away from some type of heart failure. It was a malpractice. So, imagine what all happened with that. I didn't really understand what had happened with the passing of my mother until I started getting older and realizing, like, how vital a mother's presence is in a child's life, especially a young woman, a teenager. So it starts to get harder for me the older I got. My childhood was smooth sailing. Luckily, in between that time from an adolescent to a teen, I had my godmother, which was somebody who started out as a babysitter for me while my mother worked a lot. She worked at FedEx. Her name is Dora. She lived literally across the light from where our house was. And, she treated me just like I was her own. She had one daughter. and I was her baby girl. I even called her mom. I would even sometimes call my mom by her first name, and I would call my godmother mom because I spent a lot of time with her. And I'm so thankful for her because after my mom passed, she was a very vital person in my life. She was a staple in my life. And, she kind of helped to fill that void of my mom not being there. But of course, nobody can ever replace your mother. But when I say she stepped all the way up, helping me maneuver through life, I was a lot more comfortable with her than I was with my dad, of course, because, your daddy's little girl, you can't really express yourself the way you want to versus the way you can with your mom because, men just don't understand women like women understand women. So I'm so thankful for her. She pretty much raised me and took the place of my mom. Her and my dad were not together or anything like that. They just, collectively came together to help mold the person that I am today. And like I said, I'm so thankful for her. So shout out to my godmom. And I don't address her as my godmom because, like I said, she took me in and raised me as if I was her own. To this day, I still call her mom. And, I truly plan to take care of that lady. She lives in the same place she lived in when I was first born and she first became my babysitter. And I said, one day I'm going to buy that lady a house, and I mean that. I'm going to buy her a house because she deserves it. But anywho, fast forward, my dad got out of jail when I was probably about 6. And like I said, a year after him getting out of jail, my mom passed away. My dad ended up going back to jail when I was in middle school. So that was crazy. I just remember his mom and my godmother kind of it was kind of a conflict on where I was gonna go. Because at this time my sister is a little bit older. Oh, I have a sister. I did not mention that. I have a sister. She is 7 years older than me. Her name is Nikita. So, she's not that old, but she's a little bit older now because we're about 7 years apart. So, she's handling things on her own, taking care of bills and all this stuff. And, grandmother and my godmom were kind of at odds about where I would stay. So I just remember staying with my godmother the entire time my dad was locked away and staying with my sister a little bit of the time too. But honestly, when I'm saying this stuff out loud, I'm kind of like shocked at how things were so smooth. Like I didn't have a terrible childhood. Like my childhood was the bomb.com. My parents kept me in the latest. I never lacked anything. I never lacked anything. So, as I'm saying this, it sounds chaotic, but my people did a hell of a job, keeping things smooth for me so I could maneuver through life easily. And I'm thankful for that. I never really just said any of this out loud or never really processed any of this stuff, but you know, um it's kind of enlightening, and I'm almost, I'm a little bit perplexed at the fact that all of this was happening around me, but I was still able to maintain and still able to, like I said, maneuver through life so easily. But once my dad got out of jail that last time, he never went back. We came together collectively as a family, and things have been smooth sailing since then. But I will say, the older I got, I do feel like, I'm not going to say a troubled child, but I had issues with anger a little bit. And of course, most children who are raised in a single parent home, have some type of emotional complex, or they sometimes can be a little bit more unpolished, or the child that's a little bit more rowdy. And, that was me. Me and my sister are night and day. My sister is super sweet, super chill. And, I was a child that was fighting a lot in school. Now, mind you, when I say I was fighting a lot, I would like to say that I wasn't out looking for trouble, but it was like trouble seemed to find me. And I was bullied in school. Whether people want to believe that or not, I was bullied a lot because I used to want to hang around girls who were a little rough around the edges, and they looked at me as if, I thought I was this person, or I thought I was all that, like people used to say back in the day. And, that really wasn't the case. I kind of just wanted to be accepted. And I'm really big on friends. Like, if I consider you my friend, we're locked in. We're locked in for life. So I feel like I wanted to hang around the wrong type of people, and they really didn't accept me. So, I would get bullied by these same girls who I would, consider my friends. And in hindsight, thinking about that today, I'm just like, why would you even want to hang around these type of people? Like, what's going on through your mind to make you want to hang with girls that are in gangs or girls who are mean and, nasty to you? But, that's something we can unpack later in therapy. But, yeah, I used to fight a lot. I hung around girls who kind of got into a lot in high school. And, I feel like I had to prove myself in high school. I remember one day, and if Jasmine is watching it, she's probably gonna roll her eyes. But I remember in high school, I hung with this chick named Jasmine, and she was into it with another girl about her boyfriend. And I was asking my friend, like, why don't they like her? Why don't they like her? And they heard me asking my friend in the background. They like, oh, we can whoop your ass too. They like, we can whoop your ass too because you her friend. So y'all, I had to like give it to their ass. Like, I found myself in that position a lot of times where I've had to like fight to prove that I ain't no hoe. You know what I mean? And I feel like I had to do a lot of that throughout my high school career, just to kind of, let people know that, I just look like this, like, don't play, like. And, eventually that started to get a little old. My senior year, I was kind of like, I don't want to fight. You know what I'm saying? I'm tired of fighting. Like, why y'all want to fight me? Usually it was over a boy, but, it is what it is. So after high school, I attended Middle Tennessee State University. In college, honestly, college was not for me. College was not for me. I started with a major in pre-pharmacy, and I quickly realized that's not what I wanted to do. My passion really was for fashion. I enjoyed putting clothes together, and I've always been into fashion. I've always enjoyed having on the latest sneakers. Like, I won best dressed in high school. That was always something that I was, heavily into and super passionate about. So I decided to change my major to fashion merchandising, not really knowing what it was, but I was just, excited to even get into anything dealing with fashion. But I quickly realized that I didn't like that either. At the time, I was dating my oldest son's dad. So I was coming home every weekend. Every weekend I was at the house. I used to drive a little red G6. And when I say I was running that thing down to the ground, not getting oil changes or nothing, I'm just running up the road to go see my boyfriend. And, one summer, I ended up getting pregnant. And I'm like, what am I about to do now? Like, how am I going to keep going to school? Like, I was already not really feeling school because I just didn't like the fact that I had to do this stuff, like having to go to class and get up. As a freshman, you have to get the 8 o'clock classes usually. If you don't catch you when it's early, the later classes when it's early. So I used to have to get up at 8 in the morning. I'm like, man, I'm not feeling this. School is just, I'm not mentally ready. So I was going home every weekend to see my no good ex. And, I ended up pregnant, like I said. So by the time I realized, I'm about to be a mom, I'm like, okay, let me come home and, try to figure this thing out. And I tried to go back to school. I ended up going to Southwest, but when I tell you it was a wrap, my son was a premature child. I had him at 23 weeks. Thank God that he's okay. He got all his limbs and, got his right mind. He's smart as a whip. But I had him at 23 weeks, and that was the most scary, traumatic experience of my life. He was in the hospital for 11 weeks, and he had to come home on a apnea monitor and an oxygen machine. So Imagine me at 20, what was I, 21? Yeah, because I had him when I was 20. I was 21, dealing with all of this. I mean, I've always been spoiled, so I wasn't mentally mature to be raising a child. But once a child is born, you got to do what you got to do. Um, so that was a lot within itself. And all while this is going on, I'm trying to find myself as a young woman, dating this guy that's all over town doing what he want to do. Now, mind you, me and my baby daddy, we cool to this day, but while we were together, baby, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. But I'm maneuvering through life trying to figure out how to be a mom, all while trying to figure out who I am as a young woman, and it was hard. It was hard. And by the time my son was 3, now I guess if this ain't already juicy for you, this probably when it's about to get a little juicy about my life. So by the time my son was 3, I decided to get up and move to Atlanta. I had already been thinking about moving there. I had visited a few times. I had a friend named Allie who moved there. She was kind of figuring out her life and, doing what she wanted to do. So I was like, okay, Atlanta could possibly be my new home, but I wasn't sure just yet. So the thing that put the nail in the coffin for me was me and my oldest son's dad had a really bad fight. And I was like, it's time to go. At that time, I was like, it's nothing in Memphis for me. I hate it here. I feel like I was going down a dark hole. Like, I'm like, I gotta go. So I visited Atlanta to get a job. I ended up working at Outback. I applied at Outback Steakhouse. And then once I got the job, I packed up and I went to Atlanta. I found a little apartment in Riverdale, not knowing Riverdale was the hood, because where I'm from, it just looked like a regular old apartment. But, if you ask anybody that lives around Atlanta or the outskirts, they're going to tell you that the South Side is pretty rough. So we got up and moved to Atlanta. I got all my stuff and I headed out. My dad helped me. One thing about my dad, he gonna support me with whatever I do. Out of all of the different things I've done in my life, from selling jewelry to doing music to what I do now, he's always supported me. So shout out to my daddy. That's my nigga. Like, I'm sorry, that's my nigga. Like, my dad gonna rock and roll with whatever I do. But he helped me get the U-Haul and he helped me take all my stuff to Atlanta. And I feel like that was the most pivotal point in my life where I started to mature as a young woman and kind of really just understand what life really was about. Because like I said, I've always been spoiled. I've always had things handed to me, no matter what the circumstances were, no matter where we lived. Like, my folks never made it apparent to me whether if we were poor or rich. Like, I just knew whatever I wanted, we had it. I like to say we were hood rich, ghetto fabulous. Like, I like to call it that. But life got real in Atlanta.